Well, there was a big burly man that went to the minister's house one day, and he asked for the minister's wife, because everybody in town knew that the minister's wife was a very generous person. And he was almost in tears, and he said, "Ma'am, I came to you because there's a person local to us that is about to be kicked out of her house. Her husband has passed away. She is too ill to have to work, and her 9 kids are all about ready to be turned out into the streets, the streets that are so hard to live on. And I'm just looking for somebody that can help us by giving her $400 for the rent." And she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry to hear that. Let me get my wallet." And as she's looking through her purse for her wallet, she says, "Well, how do you know these people?" And he goes, "I'm their landlord." I'm a landlord. I can make that joke. See, they didn't like that one. I said that was a fable. I was going to give you credit for me changing the joke. I was going to go with a fable this morning because it's a little bit different this morning, but that's okay. I'm going to go with the fable now, in fact.
Oh, God.
All right. She changed her thing. This isn't... Fables, aren't necessarily funny.
I have a PowerPoint for that one.
But you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Let me tell you, a frog had met up with these 2 geese, and he wanted them to take him south. And the 2 geese just couldn't figure out how that's going to be possible. A frog doesn't fly. And so they all got together and they used their brains and said, well, the frog said, "Well, how about putting a stick between each of your beaks, and I will grab a hold of your stick in the middle with my mouth." And so the fable's called Teamwork and Ego, first of all. And so that they started flying, and everything was going really, really cool. And the frog and the geese were going south. And then so all the people that were on the ground were looking up and saying, "Wow, how miraculous! The frog is, those 2 geese are helping the frog go south." And so they're talking to themselves on the ground. They said, "I wonder who came up with that idea." And the frog opened his mouth and said, "I did." As he fell to the ground. They're about the same. So.
We needed that done.
Anyway, let's join in saying our statements of truth together, please.
I am a child of God. I am deserving of my good in my life. I am accepting my good now.
Well, today's lesson is number 6 in our top 10 of how we top 10 of spiritual growth. And it's the title of this lesson is "I Am a Part of Reality." And each one of us in here, like it or not, has been prejudiced in our life. That doesn't mean that we have to continue to be prejudiced, but we have been in our past, and it's something that we have to identify with just so we know that we've been there so we can change it. The life we live now includes all the reality that we have lived to this point, and it has helped us to this point to know what we know at this point. As much as I don't like to, or as much as all of us don't like to see some of the things happening in the world around us, we have to realize that whatever actions that we take in our life are either helping with the solution or they are precipitating the problem. In actuality, there are 2 types of reality. The reality with a lowercase, how I separate them is the reality with a lowercase r, which most people are familiar with, which is everything that happens around us in this part of life. And there's a reality that is used an uppercase r, that is the spiritual understanding that lies underneath all that happens and has spiritual laws that the universe allows that to happen. Charles Fillmore defined reality only once without specifically separating the 2, yet there are 2 parts of his definition. The part that says about his small r reality is that which is abiding, eternal, and unchangeable, the same yesterday and today, yes and forever, from Hebrews 13:8. The basic principles of mathematics and music are real, because they are not subject to change. A wrong application of their principles may produce discord, but the principles are not disturbed. God is the one harmonious principle underlying all being and the reality out of which all that is eternal comes. So even though he brings into the his first part of the definition of reality, God and the principles lying underneath it, this is the small r definition for reality from Fillmore. From Merriam-Webster dictionary, it's defined as this: something that actually exists or happens, a real event, occurrence, situation, etc. Between these two definitions, we can see that the small r reality is anything that really happens. Yet reality doesn't only mean the things that happen on our outside. Our reality happens not only what goes on around us, but it also is what goes on inside of us. Because many of us come to a situation or view a situation from where we are, in fact all of us do, from where we are right now. So that's what I was saying about earlier, being prejudiced. It doesn't make a difference if you have in your past. What makes a difference is recognizing whether you are now. And when I talk about prejudice, I talk about a lot of different things. You know, a lot of people, I had a board member before, many, many years ago, and his big thing was, he's actually president of the board, his big thing was, I'm doing my best not to judge anything. Well, prejudice is prejudging. And I, would have this discussion with him quite often when he'd bring that up. I'd say, well, everybody judges, whether we want to admit it or not. I mean, I know it's in the Bible, do not judge, or lest ye be judged, and all that stuff. But that's not the Bible is not talking about the judging that we do. We judge all the time, from the simplest things that are, I choose Ford over Chevy, whatever it is. That's a judgment call. Doesn't mean that Fords are better than Chevy, but it means that in your mind maybe. But that's a judgment call. All the way to, I look different than you, so we're different. Okay? So there's extremes on both sides of prejudging. And so it depends on where we come from in life. And to me, I wanted to let you all know today that to me, looking back at church, how church has grown, one of the important things about unity that is different, that we do not really espouse on very much, and I think that we should, is that church was not built for people with problems, according to Jesus. Church was something that we get together for to grow beyond our problems and learn how not to have those problems again. But the church that's been built for the majority of things looks at people's problems and tries to help them in their problems. The church that has been built feeds people, in my opinion, instead of showing them how to feed themselves. There's a huge difference. And unity does make that difference. There are unity churches that have food kitchens, do that thing. And we might down here too, who knows? But it's not going to be on that consciousness of, I'm giving you a meal today. That's not the point, according to Jesus' teachings. Jesus never had a church, and there was a reason for that. He could have had a large congregation, I'm sure, in his time. People came from long ways to see him when he was wherever he was, because they had heard about him. Word of mouth's the best advertising. I hope that Reverend Francie's cards that she gave out last week, that y'all have handed some of them out, because that is the best advertising there is word of mouth. The church has to change, but we have to be focused on what we were built for. Charles Fillmore did not want churches. But the other people that came and learned what he was teaching did want churches, because they went out and they wanted to do their thing when they went back to wherever they were. But Fillmore wanted to add the teachings the practical Christianity teachings that he had learned, the same as Jesus Christ, into your daily life. Because that was more important than a church. And it is. This building that we're trying to build is not because we want to be the biggest church in town. It's because we want to have a facility where we can continue to grow consciousness in this area. So our reality is shaded by what we have learned in the past or what we have accepted in our mind in the past to what is happening in our world today. You know, we have the Bangladesh, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what to call it anymore. The killings in Bangladesh, which was a horrific deal. Yet how many of us felt the same about that as we did as what happened in Orlando? And it's the same thing. I mean, we even had here, in this area, has 2 students that were going to Emory. And it's not that, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I'm just trying to say that life is life. And our reality of how we look at life is important. No matter what the person looks like on the outer.
That's my pastor.
All these things that we're dealing with, though, on the reality with a small r, are dealing with sense consciousness, taking into account that each of us are not taking really into account that each of us is a spiritual being in the small r reality. And it's easy to get caught up in the small r reality because we have bills to pay, right? All of us have bills to pay. We got to pay them. Yet we want to do things in life that take time and money. So that the small r reality cannot be ignored. At some point, whether we realize it or not, though, we have to make priorities and then live with those consequences. Because even if someone had all the money in the world, all that money that they had, they would not be able to buy another second here on earth. So we all get to choose what we are going to make our reality. Is it going to be a trudging through life where, you know, we're looking forward to the end because we're going to have the hallowed heavens, we're going to go to heaven and all this because we've been able to live so meagerly and so ridiculously, in my opinion, but so bad that we deserve to go to heaven? Or are we going to learn how this place right here can be a place with love, joy, and happiness for all of us right now? Heaven is not a place somewhere else. Heaven is within the Christ within you. And no matter which path we choose, there is going to be some of that for each of us along the way. Some of each way. Because we do have emotions. We do have feelings inside. We can feel good about some things and we can feel not so good about things. But God wants us, God and the teachings of Jesus wants us to achieve what we want or what we desire in life. I don't know about you, but I've made some mistakes in my life. Only 2 according, if I look back. But
Yeah.
yeah, okay. I said if I look back, not if you look back. Some things I would have done differently if I had them to do over again, no doubt. Yet the funny thing about that is that we all get to do those things over again that we've made mistakes in life. The question is, are we going to use that information that we learned from that to change the outcome this time? There are many examples that I've had in my life where I can recite what my perception of reality is, and I want to share one of them with you today. I have just a little history. I've driven everything from a motorcycle to an 18-wheeler. But the most interesting and fun thing that I have, and I wish that, I can't remember, there's another pilot here, but anyway, the most fun I've had is probably operating an airplane. But at first, flying was not that much fun for me. I was learning how to fly, and being in the cockpit is a totally different view than being a passenger in an airplane. And while I was flying, and while that view is different in a small plane than a large plane, it still is a world opening sight to see. Well, I was taking my first lesson at the airport, and it was about a 45-minute drive from where I live, or from my business actually. And so the first time I went out there, I was nervous and not really knowing what to expect. When I went up in the air the first time, of course the instructor was at the control, So I was enjoying just looking at outside the new and experience and expanded view and how wonderful it is in the cockpit. But then he said, take the controls. And so he gave me the yoke, or he didn't give it to me, you know, you have it in front of you, you're sitting up there. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, you know, was I supposed to be listening to all those instructions that you gave me while we were getting to this point? I didn't really know that. I'm just here enjoying the ride, and then you give me the yoke. Really, you are doing quite a fine job, though, I was thinking to myself, flying the plane, so just keep on doing that, please. But I didn't say that out loud. And so I took the yoke and immediately felt like life was a lot more precious to me than I had really given it credit for before I left the ground. Although I was wanting to learn how to fly, I really did not think about studying that much before I went to take lessons. I thought, well, he's going to tell me everything, and he probably did when we were going up, but it was so much fun looking out the window, I wasn't listening. The instructor was a great older gentleman that I really liked, and Francie asked me if he's still alive, and I don't know. I need to get a hold of him. But he had been flying for many years and had thousands of hours under his belt. I totally trusted him until he let me have the controls. I thought to myself, what are you doing, you crazy old coot? Don't you know that I've never done this before? Well, he talked me through the first lesson, and he even let me bounce around a landing at the end of that lesson. And for those of you that don't know, bouncing a landing is not a good deal. You're not supposed to bounce the airplane. After the lesson, I was still in shock, so we set up the next lesson. And although I thought many times about an excuse I could call him with to cancel the second lesson, I decided to go ahead and go up with him on that next lesson. This time he let me take off, and I was a little bit more prepared. And even though he never had to fully take control of the plane, he was going back and forth with his arms, ready to take the yoke many times during that second lesson. After reaching 3,000 feet, which is cruising altitude for a small plane, he told me to just fly around keeping that altitude. So that's what I did, paying close attention to the instruments and keeping it 3,000 feet as best I could. I did get a few peeks out the front big window and side windows and began to build confidence, until I looked over at the instructor and he was leaning over with his eyes closed. Oh boy. Of course I panicked inside my head, and I said to myself, what, is he dead? I've never landed this before by myself, and he isn't going to feel a thing when we hit the earth because he's already gone. Of course, during my mind panic, I stiffened up with my body, which you do when your mind panics. You know, you stiffen up with your body, and that, of course, jerked the plane to one side. And then, thank God, he did wake up. He was just asleep. So when we landed, not long after that, I was in shock again after that experience, so we set a third appointment. And so on the drive home, I had decided that I really wasn't liking flying anymore. And I thought I just really should quit. So again, I thought of some excuses, and I thought I would just call in and cancel. But then I just thought to myself, and I thought, you know, I'm spending money that I have earned, and I'm spending my valuable time to go out here and take these lessons. So I'm going to decide that this third lesson, I was going to go up with a new attitude and try to enjoy what I was doing and what I was learning, and all the beauty around me. I was going to try my best just to do that, to focus on that. Plus fly the plane, of course. But once we took off on that third lesson, I allowed myself to feel the wonderful difference it is between being on the ground and flying in the air. Both are wonderful, but it is a different experience. Of course, there were times when I was anxious in that third lesson, because that's the one where he takes you up and makes you go straight up into the air until the plane stalls. And then, I tell you what, when that bottom drops out, you sure do feel it. You go straight down. So, Instead of panicking, though, during that stall, what I did is I trusted. I trusted the instructor, I trusted the plane, but most of all, I trusted myself to be able to get out of it. I had changed the way I looked at going up in the plane, and it changed my reality on the outer. When I began, I had anticipation because I thought flying was going to be fun. But when I began the lessons, flying was not fun. It was scary, and it felt very threatening. Then I chose to look at it differently, though, and began to love flying after the third lesson. And yes, there was other scary points, like when we landed once. I mean, everything was going good, and probably the 6th or 7th lesson, we're going, and I got all pretty much down, and I'm enjoying it, he's enjoying it. We're kind of even talking in the air and everything, and we make probably a couple of landings, then we make this one landing, and we stop. He wants me to stop for some reason. He stops and gets out of the plane. Of course, that was pretty scary. He said, "Go on, you got to go do it yourself now." But all those things helped me look at it different. There are still responsibilities when I was flying, the same responsibilities I had when he was flying and when I took over full control. But that didn't change anything on the outer. It changed only what was going on with me in my mind. I allowed myself to look at the things that can go right instead of the things that can go wrong. I allowed myself to see the abilities that I had that were good enough to fly the plane. I allowed myself to see the new things I could learn to make myself a better pilot and a more confident one. And even though all those responsibilities come with being a pilot, it doesn't prevent me from having fun. Before Reverend Francie and I had children, we flew many places in many different conditions. Some of them could have been scary. Well, some of them actually still were. And Francie is the one that kind of gets, you won't believe this about Francie, but she gets a little bit scared when she can't see what's going on. We're going to California, and we were coming along to the mountains, and she said, "Warren, we're going to hit those mountains." Francie. And it does look like we're going to hit the mountains, but no, we're not, Francie. You see the altitude there? We're high. You see the map? That's how high the mountains are. We're going to hit those mountains, Warren. We're going to hit those mountains. No, Francie, we're not going to hit the mountains. We get closer, so I do go up a little bit to calm her nerves. And then she says, "We're still going to hit those mountains." And I said, "Francie, this isn't a pressurized plane. If I go above 12,000, we're going to lose oxygen. We're going to pass out. Then we will hit the mountains." But there were many times where we could have gotten nervous and scared, but with practice, it is something that you know what to do, and there are unique situations that happen. So no matter what happens in our life, though, we have to be confident that we can pull on the Christ within us, because that Christ within us has the three omnis just like God does. Omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful. What's the third?
Omnipresent.
Omnipresent. Well, I'm not there yet, but hey, if I would have hit that mountain, I would have been. But I wasn't about to hit the mountain. But each and every one of us have a similar story where our reality of a situation may be difficult or scary in some way. But each of us also has a choice in the matter. Reality is what we make of it, no matter what the outer circumstances are. And Charles Fillmore loved to say that. Our life is different than what outer circumstances tell us that it is. So on this 4th of July weekend, and every day, I want us to be able to pull from that Christ within us. Not to get us just over the scary points, but also to enjoy life more. Because that's what we're here for. To enjoy life and each other. And know that God is blessing you now. Amen.
Amen.